So it's a lot. When you think of everything going on and you're thinking of all the different areas that could use some education and some change, and then you think of policies to add to it, like it's a lot. And so when we break it down into little things that we can do, um, makes it a lot easier for me. I'm in education, so and my children are in elementary, middle school age, so education's a really big one for me. And I graduated from UVU. I started out at BYU, and then I had some troubles at BYU, like Jocelyn, and I ended up graduating from UVU, and we had a diversity class, and it was fantastic. And our professor at the time was white male, and I had a friend, and I thought he taught the class, so I was like, where's Professor Reyes? I was excited to have a class for my friend, and he has done so much with diversity. He is very educated, and I was ready to hear his voice. And just see my friend. and but Our professor at the time said, we had Reyes for 2 semesters, and he said, you know what? No one took him serious. So we decided to put me back in, a white male in society, so people would understand, one, racism does happen in Utah. Two, it is a thing. And before with Reyes, no one was listening. And I just thought, wow, like not even in our diversity class could we handle hearing a diverse voice and trusting that voice. But I appreciated my school at the time in trying to get that diversity issue out, and they were fantastic. It was a fantastic class. It was very eye opening for a vast majority of my cohort. And they also, I appreciated that some people didn't pass the class, and that means that not that they couldn't go on with everything, they would just have to retake it, because obviously the concept they didn't get, which I appreciated. But as I go more into education, there are just very little minorities in education as a whole. I had one area I was in, it was in Utah County, and my cohort partner, she was, every recess there was always a bunch of kids around me, and finally she said, I think you're the Pied Piper of brown kids. And I didn't notice they were all brown, but then I was looking around and I was like, all these little brown kids were by me. And she's like, why do they all love you? And I simply said, I'm literally the only person of color in the school right now. And so it's just something for them to gravitate to, someone that looked kind of like them. And in the school that I'm in now, my team teachers were saying the same thing. We teach first grade, and we're in a school that's large enough where the students really just know the teachers in their grade. And then my team teachers were saying, why do all these students come by your class and say hi? Why do they all know your name? Why do like, this is your first year in our school? And I said, notice again that all of these kids are minorities, and I am the only person of color in my district. And it's just someone to identify with and see. And so it's just a lot to try to think of policies when my everyday struggle is just trying to teach my first graders that different is different, not bad or good. My children and Valina are great Native American hoop dancers. And the first time in the last 2 years that I've showed my first graders hoop dance for the first time, which is a sacred healing dance, they've laughed. And they've laughed because they've never seen anyone dance like that. They've never seen anyone dressed like that before. And that is the very first time we talk about how different is different. Different isn't good or bad. And it's like something we keep doing all year long. Oh, that's different. Very different of them. And we try to like start there. But so that's where I feel like I can be. But when I think of policies and going out, I just think existing and having a voice is what I can do right now. And hopefully in time I can do more. But right now I feel like even that just existing matters in a way, and is helpful in a way, and hopefully we can then progress to get other people out there in the same. And I have to teach my kids that, how to voice at a young age who they are and what they have to explain themselves. Where they live in an area where just their existence, they have to explain why they exist and what they believe and why they do things. And I said not everyone else has to have that voice at such a young age, but it's something that I feel like I need to prepare my students and my children for. But anyway, but I agree with policies, but I feel like it's a huge leap, and we need baby steps to get there. Does that make any sense?
Well, it
Or was that
doesn't,
helpful?
I think you did make a step forward though, because you shared your experience. That's part of moving policy forward, you know, especially when you shared it with political nerds. That definitely helps move it forward.
Well, and I agree, Joe. Well, first of all, people of color are already doing a lot, right? Like you just get to the point where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm already doing this. And so I like these ideas that Christine had of ways that people can extend themselves. And so I just wanted to give like a couple of examples. So I also was an elementary school teacher. Yay for Ella teachers. We're like super involved, right? And I would love to see something done that I did as a teacher, which is when we had a dance festival, right? And so every year they would have this hoedown, which I was teaching at a Title I school. So there were a lot of minorities, particularly for Utah. There was a lot of minorities at this school. And I'm like, really, y'all are gonna have all these kids do a hoedown? Like, it just seems kind of out of place. And I said, why don't I teach all the kids a dance from the various backgrounds, whether it's African or Native American or Polynesian or whatever, because I had a background in dance at BYU doing that, right? And so we did that. I taught, and all the teachers were totally on board with that because they didn't have to teach some hoedown dance to their kids, you know, so they're totally cool with letting me do that and getting together with the computers and the music specialties teachers and putting together this whole unit. And it was incredible the difference that that made in our school, because before that there was a palpable line between the different ethnicities of kids and that they would not cross. And as they learned music or computers about the music or the cultures that they were representing in this dance, and as they learned the dance, they became so fascinated by these other kids. And all of a sudden you could see them starting to interact with each other more. And it really honestly changed the whole tone of the school, just that one little thing. And I think, oh my gosh, if all throughout Utah has a wonderful heritage, they celebrate pioneers and they do a pioneer trek, and we already get that. We get a lot of that. What if we implemented some more things like this, where instead of, because my kids, they have a dance festival every year too, and it's really cute and it's really fun, but what if we could put that to better use and introduce, because so many other ethnicities, dance and music is such an important part, right, of that culture and of who we are. And if kids could learn that, they could have a little bit more understanding and respect. Another thing is I was put in charge of the girls that are activity day girls. So it's like ages, what, like 8 to 12. And so I was over a group and with my other friend who also happened to be Latina in our ward at church. And one of the things that we were supposed to do as an activity was like take them to some kind of a cultural event. And the first thing that popped into my head, of course, because of my background, is like, oh, the BYU is having a powwow that's coming up soon, and that would be really cool. I could take the girls to a powwow. And it was hilarious. You should have just seen me trying to explain to these families that I was taking these girls to a powwow, because they kept thinking I was taking them to a Boy Scout event. And I'm like, no, it's not Boy Scouts. It's a you understand that the word powwow, right, comes from like, it's a real powwow. Like it's like, you know, and so taking these girls to a powwow was, I'm sure, very uncomfortable for them. In fact, I think a lot of them didn't even attend, to be honest, which I thought was interesting. But, you know, it introduced them to something that's right in our own backyard, but that most people aren't even aware of, right? Because, yeah, it's just not habit. We're just in the habit of sort of doing things our way. And I think so, yeah, the more that people can kind of look outside and try and develop new habits, right, to accommodate those of us who are already doing all these things. In the first place, it's there. It's just we need other people to kind of join in, you know.
I think that's where you start with the social aspect of what do you do personally? You educate yourself. You look for different, like Christine was saying, read books by people of color, make friends with people of color, immerse yourself in the culture of other. One thing that I give props to Utah for is the starting of the dual immersion program that we have in our schools. I teach at a Portuguese dual immersion school. I do the English part, but I'm falando português. I'm learning a little bit of Portuguese as I go. But I see how fantastic it is to have these kids exposed to different cultures from first grade on. And we have Brazilian kids that are on permit. They come from all over the place just so they can go to the school and say, this is my culture. I want to learn about it, but I also want to teach it to you too. And I think that enacting that kind of policy, when Governor Huntsman was governor in 2008, they said, we're going to make this a thing. And it's just grown since then. And it's remarkable that learning a different culture, the kids are like, oh, you're just like me, but you've got cool stuff and I got cool stuff. And let's share the cool stuff that we know about one another. So go elementary school teachers, right?